2 years after our breakup, James and I met again. He was still unbearably noble, with a beautiful, young girlfriend at his side. As for me, under a dingy gray hoodie my body was marked with mottled scars. "You must be Jane," she said. "James has told me about you. Back then you two dated at school, I was so jealous." His beautiful girlfriend suddenly spoke up, looping her arm through his and acting coy. "But James, you're in love with me now, aren't you?" James and I had broken up almost 2 years ago. I had thought I'd never see him again in this lifetime. Especially not under circumstances like these. I was wearing a sweatshirt stained in places. After a day of smoke-filled, hectic work, my hair was filthy and tangled, still smelling of grease. No one would know that beneath that dingy sweatshirt, my body bore a mottled map of old and new bruises. James was dressed in a slim black suit, his customary white shirt, still as noble and handsome as ever. A young, beautiful girl accompanied him. A black and white Chanel dress and a classic purse, hair with impeccable texture, makeup light and exquisite. She was plainly a well-bred heiress. I instinctively lowered my head and drew back, foolishly hoping he wouldn't notice me, or rather, wouldn't recognize me. But he sat down directly opposite me. And the girlfriend beside him let her gaze fall on me openly and without restraint. "My name is Lucy, I'm James's girlfriend. You must be Jane, right? James has told me about you." She was pretty and charming. When she sat down she leaned close to James, like a little bird clinging to its mate. I slowly lifted my head and smiled politely at her. "Yes, I'm Jane. You two were so sweet when you dated in school, I was really jealous." After she spoke, she linked arms with James and swayed, acting coquettish. "But James, you're in love with me now, aren't you?" The private room went quiet in an instant. Everyone turned to look at me. James's gaze fell on my face as well. My throat felt unbearably bitter, but on my face I still had to wear that faint, indifferent smile. "Of course," James said, his gaze sliding off my face to rest on his girlfriend beside him, the smile in his eyes very gentle. "How did I never notice before that you like getting jealous so much?" He tapped Lucy's nose, his voice full of indulgent affection. My vision suddenly went blurry. When we were dating, he used to do that all the time too, poke at the tip of my nose and laugh, saying he loved making me jealous, my little fool. But 2 years. Jane, what are you still wishing for? Wishing the man who heartlessly dumped you would love you like he used to? Stop dreaming. I can't quite remember how the whole party ended. Lucy saw me waiting for a cab by the curb and insisted on taking me home. I shook my head and refused a few times, but Lucy wouldn't give up. James, standing to the side smoking, spoke up, "If Lucy insists on giving it to you, then just get in the car." "I really don't need it." "Fine, if you don't need it, forget it." James shot me a cold look, turned and headed toward the car. "Lucy, let's go." But Lucy held on to my arm and wouldn't let go. "Jane, it's so late and not safe. Let us drive you home." I knew perfectly well she was deliberately trying to flaunt their affection in front of me. Honestly, why bother? In the state I'm in now, there's nothing about me worth her holding a grudge over. I was a little drunk. With Lucy dragging me like this, I was so dizzy I could barely stand. She looked determined not to let it go. I laughed at myself and stumbled into the car. Halfway there, Lucy took a call and had James pull the car over to the side of the road. I watched her hurry into the car and drive away, feeling a little stunned. "I'll get off too, it's almost there." James glanced at me in the rearview mirror, his voice flat. "Just got notified, there's an emergency surgery at the hospital." I felt a bit bewildered. "Come with me to the hospital first, then I'll take you back." "There's no need to go to such trouble. As a woman alone, it's not safe right now. I promised my husband would come pick me up." He slammed on the brakes so hard the wheels screeched sparks against the pavement. James called my name in a low voice, then turned to look at me. My heart ached as if cut by a blunt knife. "I'm getting out. Goodbye." The moment I opened the car door, James moved with lightning speed, unbuckled, and stepped out. He went around to the back seat, grabbed my wrist, and shoved me hard against the car. Husband? James's eyes were ice cold as he stared at me. Jane, when, and to whom, did you get married? Speak. If I remember correctly, it's been 2 years since we broke up. What I do has nothing to do with you anymore, James. I struggled fiercely, trying to wrench myself free from his grasp. But he was so strong, I tried to pull away several times and couldn't. I could only stare helplessly at James in front of me. He was exactly as I remembered. It filled me with such longing and yet so much ache. His scent wrapped around me completely, everything was as it had been, the orange-scented body wash. It had once been my favorite. He teased me for being childish, yet he had still switched brands to the one I used. A white shirt and a black tie, those were my favorite things to see him wear. Through the haze of my drunken eyes, I even thought I saw his tie clip, so much like the one I once gave him. My vision suddenly blurred. But I clenched my teeth, I didn't want to cry in front of him. The 3rd month after I broke up with you. Jane, you really have no conscience. James slowly let go of my hand. His eyes were red as he staggered back a step. In the pitch-black night he lit a cigarette. The spark blinked at his fingertips. I remembered he'd never smoked before. But now, he'd taken to smoking. Cut down on the smoking, it's not good for your health. I murmured, forcing myself to look away from his face. I wanted to look at him so badly, but I knew I should leave. James leaned against the roadside railing, watching me walk away. I had walked about 2 or 3 meters when he suddenly pinched his cigarette and took 2 steps to catch up with me. His arm slipped around my waist, he bent his head and rested his jaw in the hollow of my shoulder. I wanted to push him away, but he was holding me too tightly, too tightly. Jane. He closed his eyes, his voice deep and low. Get a divorce. Come back to me, will you? I was utterly stunned. He had always been aloof and haughty. When I insisted on breaking up with him back then, he was angry and unwilling, yet he refused to bow his head and beg for reconciliation. But now, I couldn't believe those words had come from his mouth. Stop messing around, let go of me, I'm going home. Jane, I won't let go, and I won't let you go home. He held me tighter, leaned down and gently bit my earlobe. What would you go home for? Do you think I'll let you go back to lie in bed with that husband of yours? His voice was hoarse and low, the trailing tones tinged with resentment and anger. Jane, you are my woman, you are my James's. As he reached that last word, he suddenly spun my body around. Night had fallen deep and thick, even the stars were sparse. James's eyes were so red they were striking. He cupped my face with both hands and carefully tucked my disheveled hair behind my ear. Then, in the instant before I could push him away, he bent his head and kissed me. Something seemed to explode beside my ear. My whole mind went hazy and indistinct. Hundreds of days and nights apart, whenever I had a spare moment, every single one of those moments, I thought about him. He was the first man I loved, and the first man to whom I gave myself completely. In my heart, there was never anyone but him. I indulged in his tender, assertive kisses, my nerves numbed, unwilling to wake, only wishing to sink further. But at that moment, my phone suddenly rang. I flung him away in a panic and fumbled to answer. As soon as I picked up, a child's wailing mixed with a man's irritated, gruff cursing came through. Jane, God damn it, you're still not back this late, did you die out there? That little bitch cried all night, you better get your ass home. I held the phone and felt as if all the blood had been drained from my body, my hands and feet went cold. I instinctively looked at James standing before me, his expression was dark and shadowed. Those filthy words, he had obviously heard them all. How would he look at me? I was mortified. I blurted out, I'm coming right back, then hurriedly hung up. I'm going back. Drive a little slower, be careful. After I spoke, I didn't dare look up at him. I turned and ran away. James didn't follow. I went back home, held Mia who was crying like a mangy cat, hurried to the bedroom, shut the door, and locked it. Mia soon fell asleep in my arms. Looking at the few bruises and cuts on her face, I began to tremble all over. From the other room came more curses and the sound of things being thrown. I stepped out of the room and stood just outside the kitchen for a full 10 minutes. Then I went in and took a kitchen knife. I pushed the door open and stepped into John's room. Oh right, John is my father. But as he stands now, he doesn't deserve to be called a father in my eyes, not even to be considered a human. What are you doing in here? John muttered without lifting his head, slumped drunkenly on the bed. I gripped the kitchen knife in my hand, walked up to him, and slammed the blade hard down onto the headboard of his bed. He jumped in fright, shouting curses as he sprang up, about to hit me. I grabbed the kitchen knife and swung it wildly at him. Some men are just like that, push them and they fold, risk your life and they'll be timider than a turtle. After his arm was cut and bleeding, John immediately went limp. I'll warn you this once, if you so much as let me get hurt again, next time I'll cut your throat. His blood spattered my face. In that moment I must have looked like a demon. John nodded dumbly. I grabbed the blood-stained kitchen knife and turned to leave his room. I stood under the shower in the bathroom, rinsing off. Again I thought of James tonight. The way he looked at me with reddened eyes, the way he smoked. He held me and said, "Jane, get a divorce, come back to me, won't you?" The way he said it. I lifted my face and let the cold water wash every tear away. The stream ran over the mottled new and old wounds on my body. That streak of stubbornness and rebellion in my bones seemed, in that moment, to awaken all at once. Jane, you shouldn't be living like this anymore. 2 days later, I was working late at the shop when I suddenly received a WeChat message. It was a screenshot of a social post. It was from Lucy. Thanks to my dear cousin for buying me my first Hermes bag in life. I love my handsome, suave, wealthy angel of a brother the most. The picture showed Lucy cradling her beloved handbag, smiling radiantly. Below it, James had liked the post. I was a little stunned. James, was Lucy's cousin? Tea that night. At that moment the phone suddenly rang. It was an unknown number. I pressed accept. Jane, are you free? I'd like to meet. Yes. It was by the river that I saw James. He stood with his back to me at the railing, the night breeze making his shirt billow slightly, revealing the outline of a lean waist. I stood a short distance away and watched quietly. Some of the girls passing by couldn't help but steal glances at him. There were even those who wanted to go over and strike up a conversation. I remembered college. Because he was so popular, I became jealous. But James always indulged me, doted on me. During our relationship he almost entirely avoided any unnecessary contact with other women. He was the best, the most devoted and affectionate boyfriend. No one could compare to him. That night, the intimate scene between him and Lucy almost tore my heart to pieces. But in that moment, I seemed to feel my heart flutter again. Maybe it's because these past 2 years have been so hard. Maybe it's because I've missed him so much. I stepped up behind him, not calling out, but gently wrapping my arms around his narrow waist. He shuddered all over, then his long fingers came down and clasped my cold hand. My cheek pressed against his back, rubbing softly. James, you're picking on me. I'm sorry, Jane. I'm angry and don't want to talk to you. Is 1 milk tea enough? Not enough. I also want the roasted pig's trotters from the school gate, extra spicy. We both spoke that sentence almost in unison. I heard his soft laugh and couldn't help wanting to punch him. James tightened his grip on my hand, turned and pulled me into his arms. He bowed his head and kissed me. I lifted my face to answer him. James, I want to be with you tonight. Don't you need to go back to your husband and kids? When the deep kiss ended, he panted softly, lowered his head, and pressed his forehead against mine, seeming to chuckle quietly. I hugged his waist tightly. You only have to tell me, do you agree or not? James looked at me for a long while. I didn't dare meet his eyes and slowly looked away. When we're in love, you already know, all my boundaries can cease to exist in front of you. He leaned down slightly and gently kissed my lips. I agree. James took me back to his place. He had just returned to the city from abroad, but his family had already bought a downtown house back when he was in college. When we had dated, we had lived together for a year. Even though we had been broken up for 2 years, we quickly slipped back into our old ways. No sooner had I stepped into the entryway than James had me seated on the hall cabinet in his arms. "These past 2 years, you haven't?" I asked him. James kissed me as he murmured indistinctly, "Can't you feel it?" Of course I could feel it, I just couldn't quite bring myself to believe it. I answered his kiss, lifting my legs to hook around his waist. "James, will you despise me?" I took his hand and gently lifted his hoodie, letting his fingertips land on the scar on my lower abdomen. "I've had a child. Will you despise me?" He obviously froze for a moment, but the next instant he suddenly bit down hard, gnawing at me until my lips were torn and beads of blood welled up. He gasped, his eyes a burning red, full of hatred and reluctance, yet in the end, he softened. "Jane. I must owe you." He picked me up and kicked the bedroom door open. He threw me hard onto the big bed, unbuttoned his shirt with one hand, yanked off his belt. He seized my wrist, pinning it to the soft pillow above my head, lowered his gaze to me, and spoke slowly, word by word. "Jane, even if you turn to ash, you are James's woman." Before he finished speaking, I tilted my face up and kissed him. 2 whole years lay between us. But in that moment when feelings were at their peak, it was as if I had been transported back to the days when we were in love. James is a person with a cool, detached temperament, but I was an exception. I was lively, naive, fond of talking and laughing. Back then many people liked him, the goddess from the neighboring college, even girls from other schools. But James rejected them all. Later I thought that the reason I managed to be with him was probably that my nerve was a bit thicker than other girls. Whenever I ran into him at school, I'd call his name loudly from afar, chirping and chattering as I greeted him. At first he barely paid me any heed. But after enough times, he must have been at his wits' end with my pestering. When I greeted him again, he would nod back slightly in response. The next time I sat opposite him in the cafeteria and struck up a conversation. He put down his chopsticks and said my name for the first time. "Jane." "Wow, you remembered my name, James. I really don't want to be in a relationship right now, I'm sorry." "Is it that you don't want a relationship, or that you don't want a relationship with me?" "Sorry." He said this, stood up, picked up the tray and left. I've never been the type of girl who cries easily. But that day, for some reason, I watched him turn away decisively. Suddenly tears welled up and spilled over. No matter how thick my skin, I couldn't keep clinging to him like that. Because of that blunt rejection, I was listless for a long time. Before, I always racked my brains to engineer chances to run into him. Afterward, I began doing everything I could to avoid him. The campus used to be so small that I almost ran into James 2 or 3 times every day. But now the campus had grown so large that in over 2 months I hadn't seen him even once. Not until Christmas. I saw James downstairs by the dormitory. He was escorting a girl back to her room, wearing a black coat and smiling as he waved goodbye to her. The hot milk tea I was holding slipped from my hands and hit the ground with a clatter. It was snowing heavily that day, a thin layer had settled on my hat and scarf. When James turned to leave, he saw me standing there in the snow. Maybe my eyes were too red, maybe I'd cried too much. He hesitated for a moment, then actually walked up in front of me. I instinctively turned to run. But James grabbed my wrist. "Your bubble tea," he said, pointing at the smashed drink in the snow. My eyes stung from crying. "Are you going to pay me for it?" He was silent for a few seconds. "What flavor do you like?" "Red bean." "Okay." I stood at the school gate holding the milk tea, and as I looked down to drink it, tears fell again. I wanted so badly to ask whether he was in a relationship. If he was, I would give up completely. "Jane, why are you so tearful?" James suddenly reached out and gently wiped away my tears. I looked up at him in astonishment. James. Actually, I felt a little regret that day. Regret? Yeah, I saw you sitting outside the restaurant, crying. James paused and suddenly smiled, pressing his lips together. If I said the way you cried that day was kind of funny, would you be mad? I was crying and you still make fun of me. James suddenly stepped forward and wiped the tears from my lashes again. Jane. Maybe, we could try again. The girl from just now? A classmate, same year. She was late finishing an experiment, and the teacher worried it wasn't safe, so I walked her back to the dorm. Snow fell silently and in a flurry, and a soft warmth hid in the handsome planes of his face. I nodded dazedly, and just like that I became his girlfriend. The news that James and I had started dating quickly spread throughout the school. Everyone was very surprised. Because James and I were such polar opposite personalities. And I wasn't a girl whose beauty left people in awe. Many found it puzzling and shocking. Our school's beauty queen even cried for 3 days because of it. Girls from other schools came specifically to our campus to see what I actually looked like. In short, no one seemed to believe in our relationship. But James and I grew closer and closer. Later, we rented an apartment near the school and lived together. I remember very clearly the night we first became a couple. James kissed me gently again and again. He said, "Jane, once you graduate, we'll get engaged." But as graduation approached, I told him I wanted to break up. When the alarm on my phone went off, I sat up almost reflexively. But as soon as I rose, a sharp ache in my lower back made me emit a low groan. Still early, Jane. Go back to sleep for a while. James, still bleary-eyed, wrapped his arms around me and held me close. He closed his eyes and kissed me. You sleep, I'm getting up. There's something to take care of at home. I gently touched James's brows and eyes. And Mia, although I had told her in advance that I wouldn't be coming home tonight and my aunt was there to look after her, I still felt a bit uneasy. James slowly sat up, his bangs fell forward, shading his handsome brows and eyes. He looked far softer and kinder. I'll walk you home. He held my hand, unwilling to let go. No need, I can manage myself. I refused at once. He said nothing, and didn't insist. I got up, washed, dressed, and left. When I returned home, Aunt and Mia were still asleep. John was slumped on the living room sofa, one arm wrapped in bandages, reeking of alcohol. I walked over and kicked him squarely in the leg. John woke with a kick, saw it was me, and sprang up as if to strike. I just looked at him coldly. If you want to cripple another arm, try hitting me. He cursed and glared at me, but the raised hand still fell back down. Go to the market and buy vegetables and meat, we'll need them for tonight. John, I'm warning you. We still owe $80,000. If you dare to stop me from making money, I'll kill you. I finished speaking and went to change into my work clothes, heading to the kitchen to get busy. Now this little restaurant is our family's largest source of income. I've done the math, it's peak season now. If I grit my teeth and work hard for 2 months, I can pay off the $800,000. And once the debt is cleared, John can be removed from the blacklist. I no longer have to worry that John will affect the future between Mia and me. And James. Actually, I know that if I asked him, whether it's $180,000 or $800,000, he would give it to me. But I don't want to take his money. Not for so-called pride, and not because I'm punishing myself. If I can pay off the debt on my own, then I don't want to owe James anything more. If I want to patch things up with him, I want at least for us to appear equal. The restaurant at night was always a haze of smoke and heat. I was so busy I didn't even look up, constantly serving dishes and fetching wine for the customers. When my cousin couldn't cope, I had to go help him too. I was utterly stretched thin. James stood by for a long time before I finally noticed him. But I can't worry about him right now. Only after this group of customers left did I have some time. Do you want to eat something? Our barbecue is pretty good. I looked at James frankly and smiled as I said it. John may be down on his luck now, But he used to be in the restaurant business for over 10 years, and his cooking is still pretty good. My cousin learned from him too, he's now the chef at the shop. James didn't speak. Only then did I remember he's rather fastidious. This kind of roadside diner, when we were in school, it was only because I dragged him along that he'd go eat there with me. You don't have to worry about me. James suddenly reached out his hand, I quickly slipped away. No, my hair smells of grease, it's pretty dirty. He suddenly dropped his gaze and smiled softly. Go on with what you're doing. I'll just wait here for you. I watched another wave of customers arrive, said nothing, and turned back into the restaurant. Actually, James being like that was fine. A moment ago I was afraid he would grab me, question me about doing such hard work, and ask if I was short on money, that he could give me some. I kept busy until after 11, then washed my face, changed into a coat, and came out. You've been waiting a long time, haven't you? You used to wait for me like this all the time. I paused, surprised. It was true, I used to be the one who waited for him more. Because my coursework was lighter and his was heavy, I often waited for a very long time. But I do it willingly, because I like him. Are you tired? I'm okay, I've gotten used to it. I bought you a milk tea. He handed me the milk tea, the red bean flavor I like. I was holding my milk tea when James suddenly asked me a question. Before we broke up, did my mother come to see you? What did she say to you? I bit the straw and, after a long time, slowly looked up. Don't blame Auntie, what she said back then wasn't wrong. Why didn't you tell me about your family's situation? I thought about telling you, you were my boyfriend, the one I trusted most and wanted to rely on. At the time, my very first thought was to come to you. I smiled, the pain that once seemed so acute now felt like a light breeze, and I could say it so lightly. Then why didn't you come? I blinked, holding back the tears that were about to spill. I had a bit of an accident, a minor car crash, so I couldn't come to see you. Where are you hurt? Jane, why didn't you tell me anything? James took hold of my arms, I could see the urgency and worry in his eyes. I knew, if fate hadn't intervened then, if it hadn't been for that little car accident that made me realize I was pregnant, James and I might not have been apart for 2 years. It's nothing serious, just some scrapes. They didn't even need to keep you in the hospital back then, so don't worry. I even hopped a few times in front of him, see, I can run and jump, nothing's wrong with me. Jane, actually I already looked into it a long time ago. You never got married. But you did have a daughter, I worked out the timing. James, give me 2 months. 2 months from now, I'll tell you everything, okay? Okay. Then, can I use your bathroom to take a shower now? I tilted my head and looked at him, smiling a little slyly. Maybe it was that my smile at the moment had a bit of that carefree, heartless quality I used to have. James looked at me for a long while, then gently nodded, of course. When I came out of the bathroom and he wrapped his arms around me from behind and kissed me lightly, he asked in a very soft voice, "You're not going back tonight, won't your daughter fuss? Auntie's been here these past few days. Can you come again tomorrow night?" Sure, as long as you have the energy and you need me. James chuckled softly in my ear, I wonder whose stamina is weaker now. These days are not like before. Do you think all those hard 2 years of work were for nothing? I have far more energy than I used to. Is that so? Why don't you try? I turned around, grabbed the lapel of his robe, and gently pushed him onto the bed. Then I swung my leg over and straddled his waist. I took his long fingers in my hand and slowly leaned down. That night was very long. 18 days before I paid off the last $25,000 of my debt. I saw that familiar license plate again. James's mother wore a beautiful dress and carried a Chanel bag. She looked completely out of place in this restaurant. She frowned at me, who still smelled of cooking oil. Is there a cleaner place where I can sit? There's a coffee shop across the street. She glanced back at the pitiful little cafe. Never mind, let's stay right here. I took a tissue and carefully wiped the chair clean. Mrs. Margaret, please sit here." She said nothing, frowning, and perched down with a finger hooked in her hand. "Did you need to see me?" "Of course. You want me to leave James?" She raised an eyebrow slightly. "You have quite a bit of self-awareness." I sighed. "Why don't you try persuading your son?" "If I could persuade him, would I be coming to you?" I sighed again. "This time, I'm afraid it's unlikely. Jane, I don't actually dislike you, it's just, you know." She was a pampered lady of rank, a dignified woman all her life, and really couldn't bring herself to say anything too harsh. But I knew full well what she was about to say. It would very likely be that I was not good enough. I had thought about that question too. Back when we first fell in love, I had considered it. As long as James didn't care, neither did I. But if he showed even the slightest hesitation or reservation, I would give up. Obviously. 2 years ago, when my family was still relatively well off, he showed no hesitation or reservation. And now, even though I looked utterly destitute, he still showed no hesitation or reservation. That was enough. "Mrs. Margaret, I'm really sorry, I cannot agree to your request." "Why did you agree 2 years ago?" "Because at the time I wasn't sure what the final outcome would be with my father. I was worried that if he went to prison it would affect James's future, and our child's future. But now, my debts are almost paid off." "But Jane, have you considered that with your background like this, James would lose face?" I was about to say something when Mia suddenly came running toward me, wobbling, holding a stick of candied hawthorns. "Mom, candied hawthorn, you eat." Her chubby little hand held the candied hawthorn up to my mouth. I smiled, bowed my head and took a small bite. "So sweet." "Mia, be good, go play." "Jane, is this your daughter?" "Yes, she's my daughter." I looked at her calmly and held Mia in my arms. You didn't have the baby aborted?" "The doctor said I was knocked down by the car, covered in injuries, but the baby was perfectly fine, no accident." "It means my daughter and I are fated." I gently stroked Mia's jet-black hair. "I'm sorry, at the time. I really couldn't bring myself to do it." Mrs. Margaret slowly rose to her feet. She seemed to want to say something. But looking at the innocent, adorable Mia, she still couldn't bring herself to speak. "Do you want a candied hawthorn?" Mia suddenly held out the sugar-coated fruit, which was beginning to melt, toward her. Mrs. Margaret instinctively wanted to pull away, but Mia's expression was simply too innocent and adorable. She hesitated for a moment, bent down, and smoothed Mia's hair. "Good girl, Grandma won't eat it, you have it." Mia happily went on licking the candied hawthorn. She glanced at me, then at Mia, and after a long while, turned and walked away. At the end of the month, I deposited the last payment into the account. Then I contacted the court. John would be removed from the list of dishonest persons. All the debts were settled, the final massive boulder that had been pressing down on me was completely removed. I felt the sky was blue and the clouds white, my mind clear and refreshed. For the first time in 2 years, I felt this lightness. I called James, but there was no answer on the other end. I didn't think much of it and called him again when I closed up for the night. Still, no one picked up. I started to feel a little unsettled and sent him a message on WeChat, but there was no reply. Not until 2 in the morning. He suddenly placed a video call to me. "Jane, sorry to have woken you." He was still in his blue scrubs, sitting wearily on the corridor floor. "James, did something happen?" "One of my patients didn't make it off the operating table tonight." His eyes were bloodshot. On the screen I saw his hand trembling, a film of moisture glossing the depths of his gaze. "He was only 7, such a smart, sweet child." "I feel so sorry, so guilty, I feel useless, Jane." James leaned against the wall and lifted a hand to cover his face. "James, don't think like that. You did everything you could, you did a great job, really, don't be so hard on yourself, James." "I'm coming to you now, James, wait for me." I didn't hang up the video call. I threw out a coat at random and dashed out. When I reached the hospital, James was still sitting on the corridor floor. He saw me and reached out his hand. I walked over, said nothing, and simply held him tightly. James buried his face in my chest. I gently stroked his hair and soothed him in a soft voice. It's all right now. You're a doctor, James. You'll go through many things like life and death. I was too arrogant before. If you're that capable, of course you have the right to be proud. But I won't be like that anymore, Jane. I've finally come to see how insignificant I am. Yes, we humans are inherently small. So make peace with yourself, James, you've done more than enough. I just don't know how to face the child's parents. They trusted me so much. They will understand you. In this world, aside from the child's parents, you are the person who most wants the operation to succeed. They will surely understand. Will they? They will. I wasn't wrong when James and I left the hospital. The child's parents chased after us with red-rimmed eyes. They grasped James's hand and said many words of gratitude. The child's mother wept as she kept thanking him. James seemed to be crying too. But he probably didn't want me to see him shed tears, and refused to meet my gaze no matter what. I gently took his hand and intertwined my fingers with his. I followed him step by step, trailing behind until his emotions had calmed. The moonlight that night was beautiful. On the apartment's large terrace, I nestled in his arms. His fingers slipped through my shirt and rested on the scar from my cesarean, gently stroking it. Does having a baby hurt? Very much. I used to hear people say cesareans don't hurt, it's all a lie. He held me even tighter. I'm sorry. You're not to blame, of course, neither am I. Maybe fate just plays tricks on people sometimes. If John had simply run the restaurant and focused on business, but instead thought about raising funds and making money, got scammed, and then cheated his family and friends. After the accident, if John hadn't fallen into a slump, his personality would have changed drastically, becoming terrifyingly violent. I would never break up with James no matter what. I liked him so much, how could I bear to be apart from him? Yes, Jane did nothing wrong, but I was still at fault. James's face was so gentle in the moonlight. If back then you and I broke up and I had stubbornly refused, it would have been better. Even after the breakup I shouldn't have sulked and gone abroad to study, leaving everything behind. I was too hot-headed then, didn't know how to swallow my pride. I didn't do well enough, wasn't a competent boyfriend. I shook my head, none of that was wrong, everyone's pride comes first when they're young. James, you only made one mistake. Which one? You shouldn't have brought your cousin last time, you shouldn't have tricked me like that, provoked me. Although the misunderstanding was cleared up quickly, I still can't forget it. How heartbroken and upset I was that night, watching him being so intimate with Lucy. I didn't mean to lie to you. It was just that when I saw you, I remembered when you wanted to break up with me, and I couldn't hold back. So these past 2 years, you've really been alone the whole time? I thought I had made that very clear during this period. You're lying. Back when we lived together that year, when did you ever have desires this strong? James couldn't help laughing softly as he leaned in and kissed me. You really are different from before now. My stamina has indeed improved a lot. It seems I can take it easy from now on. Don't you think about slacking off? As you command, darling. James's mother probably agreed to us being together mostly out of respect for Mia. When James and I brought Mia back to the Chen household, I still felt a little uneasy. Although James's family wasn't aristocratic, they were very wealthy. Marrying a daughter-in-law like me, whose family ran a barbecue restaurant, would leave Mrs. Margaret embarrassed when she went out to play cards with others. But what could be done? James said if Mia and I couldn't marry into the Chen family, he'd go to our house and become the son-in-law. Mrs. Margaret choked in anger. Is their family really that great? What is so attractive about them? Barbecue is pretty good, James replied, shamelessly bold. Mrs. Margaret couldn't hold back and, furious, slapped him. But she knew her own son best. For the 2 years since the breakup he'd lived like an ascetic abroad, spending day and night in the operating room. Mrs. Margaret thought about her son's state at the time and, in the end, soothed herself. If she agreed, the Chin family would gain a daughter-in-law and an adorable granddaughter, and in time there would naturally be a little grandson. If I refused no matter what, then even my son would be handed over. After weighing everything, Mrs. Margaret could only pinch her nose and accept me as her daughter-in-law. At least my educational background was decent, and I've already started studying for the exams. Becoming a teacher or a civil servant in the future, in Mrs. Margaret's eyes, would still be respectable. After lunch, James and I played with Mia in the garden for a while. Mia grew sleepy, and James carried her to sleep. His movements holding the child were still a bit awkward, but already much more practiced than the first time. I still remember the scene of the day James first met Mia. Mia looks like James, but she has my temperament. She likes good-looking people, even among the boys next door. She only wanted to play with the prettiest one. So James won Mia's heart very easily. Being carefree like me isn't so bad, at least Mia accepted this dad quickly, and the two of them got along exceptionally well. That night we didn't stay at the Chens, we took Mia back to James's apartment. Mia fell asleep in her little bed. James took my hand and led me into another room. Mia will wake up in the middle of the night. Let's go back and sleep in a bit. Can't you just stop for one night? Jane, you owe me nearly 1,000 days and nights. Don't you have surgery tomorrow? The operation is in the afternoon, there's plenty of time. Then, just once. I grabbed his tie and made him lower his head. I like kissing him like this, kissing his handsome chin and lips. Just like when we were in love back then, our first kiss. I still remember the starlight that night and that little copse. And the thin nervous sweat on his brow, and the trembling fingers when he held me. I've always been bold, our first kiss was my initiative. But I was inexperienced, and my teeth caught his lip. We embraced in the dark, feeling our way as we learned to kiss. We were each other's countless firsts, so it cut deep and stayed with us. I remember how fast his heart was beating that night. And after 2 years, his pulse still quickened when he held me. And I still loved him just the same.